Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the September listening sessions for the California Truth and Healing Council. As you're aware, we've adjusted our listening schedule moving forward, and we'll have general listening sessions on Mondays from 1 to 2:30 during the regular week, and you'll get those notices. And then Wednesday today from 6 to 7:30 p.m. with the regular business meeting of the council on Friday at 1 p.m. My name is Christina Snyder, and I'm a member of the Dry Creek Ranch Area Band of Pomo Indians and the tribal advisor for Governor Gavin Newsom. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that the land I'm joining you from is the original homelands of the Patwin peoples. I'm now going to briefly walk through some of the logistics for today's session. First, we are recording this session, and it's available for public participation via Zoom and dial-in. The recording will be available on the CTHC YouTube, which is at the Tribal Advisor YouTube, and the recording and summary notes will be available on the CTHC landing page and blog when they're ready. For those interested in following the council, ongoing updates, including listening session recordings and listening session summary documents, are available at the California Truth and Healing Council updates blog at catruthandhealing.com. You can also get updates for events by following the Governor's Office of the Tribal Advisor on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Additional details, including meeting dates, agendas, and background information, are available at tribalaffairs.ca.gov/CTHC. If you haven't done so already, we'd appreciate if you could update your name to let us know who you are. We're going to start with brief introductions of those of you who have joined us, and then as always, we'll dive into a quick overview to get everyone up to speed on recent updates, and then we'll go into the listening and discussion portion of today's convening. If you'd like to speak at any point in time, you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. If you're using the Zoom app, you should be able to raise your hand using the app controls, but you can also use Alt-Y in Windows or Option-Y on Mac to raise or lower your hand. If you've dialed in, you should be able to raise your hand by pressing *9. You can also email written comments to info@catruthandhealing.com at your convenience. And you can always put any introductions, any remarks, any comments, questions, or feedback directly into the chat, or you can unmute your line and speak when it feels appropriate. Now, before we begin, I'd like to remind participants that all of our council members, council staff, and many of you are members of the victim population in need of collective healing. So I ask that you engage with the council, our office, and each other with respect and with your whole heart and a healing mindset. Many of us doing this work are navigating systems that were not built for us to make change that was never contemplated. This in itself takes an enormous amount of patience and emotional integrity, and we're all doing our best to make strides in these spaces. So thank you again for joining us, and now feel free to introduce yourselves to the group. And I think I'll start with Loretta, who's on today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Loretta Miranda. I am Chief Deputy Tribal Advisor and Special Counsel for the Governor's Office. I am a descendant of the Morongo Band of Mission Indians from Southern California. I'm Serrano and Cupeño. And today I'm joining you from the ancestral homeland of the Cahuilla people. And just happy to have you all here and looking forward to our first evening session and seeing how this goes.
Awesome. Thank you, Loretta. And we also have Michael Park on from our office. So if you'd like to contact us directly or set up a time to meet, you can always message him directly as well. I am now going to allow the council members who have joined today to introduce themselves and say a few words if they'd like. Councilmember Harper, you just joined us, so I'll start with Vice Chair Myers because he's had a little bit more time to get acclimated, and then we'll have you speak to the group as well.
Ayokui Naknao, Frankie Myers, Vice Chairman for the Yurok Tribe, member of the Truth and Healing Council. Very excited to sit and listen to see what we have to say today and hopefully have a good conversation. Welcome.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Harper.
Open Nikantosh, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this important work, and we really appreciate your participation.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Harper. Councilmember Bojorquez, would you like to say a few words to the group?
Mishi Stu, it's good to see everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm also looking forward to hearing and listening on today's session. I just want to thank everybody and thank the opportunity to have an evening session and give it a try. So I'm glad everybody was able to make it. Thank you.
Great, thank you, council member. And then if anyone else would like to introduce themselves to the group or say a few words or even say a few thoughts as you enter this space, we'll give you a little bit of time to do so. And you can also introduce yourselves in the chat. Julie?
Oops, hi, getting unmuted. My name is Julie Reynolds. This is my first time here, and I just wanted to ask the group if it's appropriate for me to be here. I'm not a Native person. I'm a reporter and a kind of an activist, been very involved in transformative justice and juvenile justice issues. And I wanted to just see what is happening here, because I was very interested reading about truth and healing. So I just wanted to put that out and ask the group if it's okay for me to listen in.
Thank you, Julie. I think
And I understand if it's not. So.
We very much appreciate that. And I think from our perspective at the Tribal Advisor's Office, we're okay with it. It looks like the council members are also okay with it. And so thank you for checking. We really appreciate the respectful heads up and asking if that's appropriate and letting folks know that you're here. So welcome. And if you have specific questions, we're all happy to engage with those as well.
Okay, yeah, I'm just observing and checking it out at this point. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. If anyone else would like to introduce themselves to the group, you can go ahead and do so at this time. You can either just go ahead and unmute yourself, or Hillary, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Happy to see everyone from across the state. My name is Hillary Rennick. I am Pomo and Paiute, Northern Paiute. I can make all kinds of tribal jokes on that, but I won't. I'm here. I'm friends with a couple people that have been tuning in since the council was formed, and I am interested in, I'm calling in as a tribal member, my issues are subsistence issues. My family is one of the families that never took the California claims. So our argument has always been that we did not cede our hunting and fishing rights or gathering rights to our Aboriginal territory. And also my concern is that the California Indian Brotherhood 100 years ago at the Zerati conference and some other conferences, they put together a lot of policy papers, and there's documentation, and it's kind of frustrating to me when I have some guest lectures in some of the universities. And it's like, of course, the invisibility of being a California Indian is generally frustrating, but that it seems like we're starting over, and just that, the writings from 100 years ago are so special to me because those are the people that survived the cultural genocide and, the hegemony that we were all subjected to. So I just wanted to say that I really hope, of course, it's more than just a literature review, that we really speak and hold, some of the work that our grandparents did in reverence. So, but thank you guys. I'll be on for a while.
Great, we appreciate it. And I think if you have suggestions about how to incorporate that into this work, I think this council is not interested in starting over or rewriting anything, but highlighting those documents, those narratives, those experiences that may not have been highlighted or may be less visible to the general public. And so I think if there are ways that, or resources that you think that the council should be incorporating into its collective history that it's doing in partnership with the state, we'd love to hear those ideas as well. Chuck, I always say not to put you on the spot, go on cam, so I will put you on the to say anything to the group.
Mishmin Tuhish, I just wanted to say hi. My name is Chuck Striplin. I'm Mutsun from Monterey Bay region. I'm also the tribal advisor and liaison for the California Fish and Game Commission. And just wanted to support 100% what Hillary just had to say. Access to resources for tribes in the state is a huge issue, and I'm you know, both Christina and I and a number of other folks on this call and working within state government as well as tribal governments, you know, are really in a position now to start making some progress in that area in the policy space. And so I hope that whether it's through work groups or some of the interagency work that that the council does in creating recommendations in this space, just really hope that we're able to articulate a clear vision of what some of the potential avenues for progress might be with state government to kind of roadmap it out for those of us that are working in a position to make some change.
Great, thank you, Chuck. Would anyone else like to introduce themselves to the group or say a few words?
Mishistu, Ga'a Didi Matsunara Sibara, Ga'a Rumshin Amatura Tayoloni. My name is Didi Matsunara Sibara. I'm the tribal chair of the Rumsin Amatura Tayoloni, which in our language means Rumsin people of the Ohlone land. And I'm here to hopefully get somewhere, since we are not federally recognized, to find out what benefits we can have for our people and what kind of understanding we can come to with the state to better the lives for our people as far as community resources and things to help us preserve our culture, our languages, and our traditions by working together with other groups that are similarly looking for the same thing. We need to preserve our water, our environment, our lands, and do what we possibly can, because we don't have the ability to get to the federal places that other recognized tribes can get to. So hopefully we can meet with other people that are looking for the same thing and work together in unison with people that are here for the same reason and have our voices heard as well. And we do appreciate being able to have this space. And also, I was really honored to be at the rally in Long Beach on Tuesday, and I'm happy to have our governor stay in his seat. So thank you.
Thank you. I can speak from my personal position that I'm very happy that he's still here too, because I think this work is just getting started and it doesn't happen without him. So we're very pleased to have him still in this space. I won't talk about it more because I'm still processing, but it's about 2 weeks ago, I had a weird realization that that election was coming up and that things might be just the flip side of everything that we've been doing and trying to build here. And so it is just a huge major relief to see that we can continue this work and continue to build and continue to bring in partners and not have to drop this effort, you know, midstream, or have to rework it in a way where the state might not necessarily be full partners at the table, which would lose a lot of the value of the work, I think. Not all of it, but I think having the state be a partner in a joint effort to right wrongs, you know, you've got accountability partners at the table. So I think Loretta and I are glad that we still have a good leader who cares about this work and cares about making a difference. And I think with that too, and I know there's probably more intros that need to be made. I was thinking about Chuck too, and some of the work we've been doing internally. Just for this group, if you know anybody, the water boards, state water boards is looking for a tribal engagement person. They have an opening. If anybody knows anybody who might be interested, I think it's a sort of an entry level. And then Cal Recycle as well is looking for a tribal and EJ advisor. So if anybody knows anybody who might be interested, it's a really good opportunity to be able to do some good work in spaces that could use some focus on tribal specifically. So if there's anyone else who'd like to introduce themselves to the group or say a few words, you have the floor. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and go into the updates, but feel free to jump in if you'd like to introduce yourselves to the group at any time, or if you'd like to put anything into the chat. And if I end up having shaky internet, Loretta may need to take the lead. Just a heads up, I am joining you from home after hours, so my internet gets a bit unpredictable at times. So we'll go into the overview and updates. And as always, if you have any questions as we go, or if there's anything that you'd like more clarification on, please feel free to put anything in the chat and we'll try to answer in real time. And then we'll have a pause after the updates. If anybody has anything they'd just like to share with the group or any thoughts that they have or reactions, we'll open it up for the group to chat a bit. And then also at that time too, if any council members on have any questions for the group, feel free to ask that of the group at that time as well. I'm gonna go ahead.
And I just want to flag that Councilmember Elliot Santos has joined us. So if you'd like to give an introduction or introduce yourself, please feel free to do so.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry I was late. I'm Angela Elliott Santos, the chairwoman of the Manzanita Band of the Kumeyaay Nation, and good to see you all.
Welcome and good to see you as well, council member. Okay. Okay, are you, I guess I should start it, Loretta, and then we'll see if it's the right view.
It looks like it will be. Let's see. Yep, you're good.
Great. Okay. So as always, photo credit to Loretta, who took this on California tribal lands. And today what we'll be doing is going through an overview of the council and its charge so that everybody is thinking about the work of the council and what it's charged to do and what its scope is. We'll then go over the September council meeting agenda for Friday. And then we'll go through any updates that happened over the last month. We'll then do the pause for the listening and discussion. And then if we have time, we can go into the document overview and feedback for respectful meetings. So what is the California Truth and Healing Council? It is a council made up of representatives from California Native American tribes charged with bearing witness to, recording, examining existing documentation of, and receiving California Native American narratives to clarify the historical relationship between the state and California Native Americans in the spirit of truth and healing. So the council itself is not drafting this this narrative, is not telling this story. It's very much receiving these narratives, these experiences from the California Native community, and also incorporating pieces, as I mentioned earlier, that already exist in documentation, and hopefully are those stories from people who lived through a lot of this, to really elevate the California Native experience in the holistic history and telling of our collective history of California. The council will submit a final written report of findings to the governor's office by 2025. And we can build out that timeline given that we've had some unanticipated constraints on our ability to do some of this work. And so if we get close to that time where we feel like we may need to build in a few more years, we can issue a revised executive order that allows for that, for longer timeframes. The final report should reflect a holistic understanding of the historical relationship between California Native Americans and the state. And the final report may also make recommendations aimed at reparation and restoration, and consider how to prevent similar depredations or policies in the future. So it's both, as I mentioned, reframing how we tell the collective history of people of the California, of statehood and how things came about here, and reframing that perspective. And then also can make recommendations, as was mentioned earlier, that aim to restore or repair what happened here and what the state has been accountable for. So for example, you know, in the process of intentionally hiding the negotiated treaties, or of making efforts to make sure that those promises were not kept, you know, the mass divestment of tribal lands, how can we as the state take action, create mechanisms, create funding streams to make sure that tribes are able to restore the access, the ownership, and the use of those lands that have been significant and lifeways for tribes since time immemorial. The council is organized under a charter and is made up of voting members and non-voting members under the charter. There are 12 voting members from each of the 4 regions, with 1 seat for non-federally recognized designee in each region. And this isn't meant to be representative, it's meant to capture the diversity of different tribes, different backgrounds, different viewpoints, without necessarily being representative of those viewpoints. So for example, there isn't an expectation that, you know, the designee from, you know, non-federally recognized tribe from the Eastern region will be carrying all of the needs and concerns from that region. The idea is that that is the person that can help the council understand some of those issues, but also help facilitate conversations with trusted partners, with other California Native people from similar backgrounds and experiences, so that we're creating a welcoming table for everyone who wants to join. Each region also has an alternate voting member, and that's to ensure quorum for action. And so quorum is pretty large to ensure that there's regional diversity in any action that takes place, and to make sure that there's no region that necessarily dominates how things move forward for the council. The council welcomes and encourages all available methods for public participation. And so participants are encouraged to attend and observe all meetings of the council, submit written statements to the council, make oral statements and testimony to the council, participate in interactive dialogues, panel discussions, and informal meetings, organize and host affiliate events on issues relevant to the work of the council, and join the work of the subcommittees. We also have a charge of tribal consultation. And so if you're a California Native American tribe, and that's the tribes that are on the NAHC contact list, we are seeking to begin initial consultation meetings, and we'll be sending a formal request for consultation in the following weeks. We anticipate having this interactive kind of front-end consultation through the end of the year, so that we can scope out how your tribe may want to engage with this work, how your tribe may want to access resources, what resources your tribe may need to be able to engage with the work. And so we will send out a formal request for consultation soon. If you're ready to meet and you'd like to get moving, you can also reach out to this email and we can set up those meetings. Right now, we're pretty flexible about the method and mode of meetings, but given the uptick in the Delta variant for COVID, we are encouraging folks to have meetings via conference call or Zoom. Just these initial scoping meetings, but we can also plan out future meetings where we can come and either equip you with what you need to have recorded testimony, have recorded materials, capture materials as you feel your tribe feels comfortable incorporating into this work. Tribes can share as much or as little as they're comfortable with. And then outside of tribal consultation, which again, we call it differently because we have a different charge from the governor and from the state in how we conduct consultation with tribes. But outside of tribal consultation, we're also available to meet with Native American individuals, organizations, and groups at their request. And even if you're a tribe that's not on the contact list, we understand that there's some tribes that aren't comfortable with that process as well. So if you'd like to contact us and initiate consultation from your tribe and you're not on the list, we're happy to accommodate those requests as well. So in 2021, the council's meeting on a monthly basis, which is virtual until further guidance is issued from the state for the remainder of 2021, or until the council decides otherwise to set up the foundations for the council's work. So I think a lot of folks come to the council and think the meat of the work is already happening. And really what's happening is the council's setting up foundations to get into that work. And so there's a lot of contracting that's happening right now. There's a lot of conversations about how to move forward and a lot of conversations about the resources needed by communities to move forward and engage with this work. And so that's what this council has been doing this year, is setting up policies, procedures, and the like to ensure that once the council kicks into its normal meeting schedule, which is on a quarterly basis in March, June, September, and December, which again, as a reminder, is a 2-day structure with day one of being talking and healing circles, which are more community oriented and focused on helping participants develop tools to heal, but also process this massive historical trauma. And also kind of just talk about things that need to be incorporated, talk about things and create a mechanism for us to listen to each other and heal together. So that will be day one of the meetings. And day two will be more of a hearing style where regionally we'll take the recommendations of the local tribes about what should be heard in that region. So for those regional quarterly meetings, which will go around the state, they will they'll focus on what the tribes. Sorry.
We can hear you now. I was admitting somebody and it hit unmute. It hit mute on you because we clicked at the same time. So sorry.
Okay, great. So the regional meetings will be focused on what the tribes in those regions and the Native people in those regions feel need to be focused on. So for example, if one of the major acts that took place in the area was mass relocation or because of, cattle herding and things like that, where are the places that are significant? What are the acts that were significant? And the region will dictate what gets focused on in that bigger meeting. Aligned with all of that work, we will have a research coordinator that's helping facilitate pulling together resources that already exist, and then also pulling in the consultation responses, which can include submissions of our already existing resources, so photos, recordings, transcripts, but also we'll have the ability to bring recording equipment to you to be able to record anything that your tribe or your family or your community feels should be a part of this work. And we have a budget to transcribe those recordings as well. So for example, something that came up on the last listening session from Councilmember Lucas was that she really encourages tribal communities to bring their elders to tell their stories and to tell the truth of their stories for inclusion in this project and in this collective history, to make sure that we're not missing out on that rich experience of people who may not have ever been asked to tell their stories or who never felt comfortable telling those stories. So that's something that we can incorporate as is comfortable for your tribe or your community. One thing to note is that the materials that come into this work are all part of public records because the state is a party to this effort. And so we want to make sure that anyone that we're talking to is fully knowledgeable about what that means and what what that means about access to anything that's submitted. Part of the goal of the final report is to create a living public document that is hopefully going to be a paradigm shift in how the state views its history. And so, you know, when things are submitted, depending on how they're submitted, we just caution folks to understand that there are some things that may be subject to Public Records Act requests. So if folks don't want those things shared or have the potential to be shared, it would be good for us to understand in case we need to think about a legislative exemption to the Public Records Act request, or if we need to be just thinking about the language that we use so that people are fully aware of what what's publicly available once they submit it. So anyway, for this month, the next meeting is on Friday from 1 to 4. And again, public comment starts promptly at 3 p.m. And so the council will get through all the business that it can. And then at 3 p.m. it'll promptly begin public comment. And that's when the public can issue its feedback. The meeting will be available via Zoom and live stream on the Tribal Advisor YouTube, and that should be updated on the website as well. And then the council was going to meet in October and November, but we are suggesting that we cancel them to allow subcommittees and staff to finalize some of the work product to get ready for a bigger launch in January. And so what we'll be doing is working on things which I'll walk you through in a moment, but finalizing internal guiding documents, policies and procedures, finalizing contracts, getting the funds together. We've been working with a funding partner who's going to be standing up a community-oriented fund to help pass through funds to community members who are engaging in this work for things. For focuses, what our funding subcommittee will be thinking about. And so we encourage you to work with them as they meet over the next several months, but for needs of the community to engage. So for example, if you're a non-federally recognized tribe and you need funding to be able to staff phone lines while you come to these meetings because you're the person staffing the phone lines during the day, then that's something that could be contemplated in the community fund. If you need funds to travel to your regional meeting and you want to be able to be there and fully engage, that's something that could be contemplated as well. If you want to engage, but you don't want to bring your kids because you want to make sure that you can talk about some things that you might not necessarily want them to be there for, potentially there could be funding for childcare. So it's kind of open to a lot of things. And I think that it'll be important for the community to engage with the funding subcommittee so that they can think through what those needs are and make sure that those are incorporated into that community-oriented fund. Am I missing anything at this point, Loretta?
Nope, I think you covered it.
Okay, great. So the agenda for Friday, and I apologize if it's kind of small on folks' screens. We'll do the welcome, a roll call, and then a traditional opening. And the traditional opening, as we did last time, if there are any community members who'd like to offer a traditional opening, we can send you presenter credentials so that you can come and offer the opening for the council meeting. Those openings are not live streamed. And so they, if you'd like to come and you'd like to share in this space but not be live streamed, that is available for you as well. And so you can reach out to Michael, who's on the chat right now, or you can reach out to our info email as well and let us know that you'd like to offer that. And then we'll go into council member updates, and that'll be anything that the council members have been up to over the past month. So any meetings they've been to, any conversations they've had, anything that they've been thinking about in terms of the work of the council. We'll then go into the subcommittees, and we need to staff the status and identity subcommittee, which will be the subcommittee that focuses on how the needs of specifically folks that lack status or have major issues in being able to assert their identity. And this would be, for example, folks that have been disenrolled from their tribes, folks that are from non-federally recognized tribes, not to conflate the two because they're two different things with different needs, but that committee would be focused on thinking about how those issues can be addressed by the work of the council. And Hillary, you have a raised hand. Would you like to ask a question?
I'm not good on Zoom, so I apologize. I was like, where's the raised hand thing? So I just had 2 comments really quick. And so maybe you said this, Christina, but I just wanted to make sure that the verb tense is correct. So like for me and in my experience that historical trauma is not in the past, like it is right now, unfortunately, with us. I mean, you know, I only know from my own experience, of course, but and what I've heard from my my relatives across the state. But you know, we have judges now that our people, you know, appear in front of, whose families, you know, parents and grandparents had furniture in their office made from the skin of our men. And so like historical trauma is not in the past. It's unfortunately living with us today, and unfortunately probably will be in the future. And so like the fact of with colonialism and racism and the cultural hegemony, you know, adds to our school to prison pipeline that happens. And I'm only speaking from my experience in Northern California. I know some other counties that are similar, right? And so I just am cognizant of the, you know, again, with the invisibility of being a California Indian, that yes, things happen. Yes, you could go to the counties and often find our people's names as the laborers because they were indentured servants, slaves, right? But also like that's also with us today. And then the other thing connected is just the intergenerational like sexual abuse on many reservations that are still live today, like whole families. And, you know, stemming from a lot of the religious, the missionaries that came and BIA often paid for and paid their salaries. So like these things that we see, like, you know, the healing circles and stuff, like it's, our people are suffering right now, like right this minute. And so, and it goes from the children to the elders. And I don't know, I'm just concerned about just the you know what I mean? The now, just, I don't want it to all be like, we have a past and it's so sad and we need to move on. Like, no, like this is like, unfortunately, like that's adds to the disparity across the state is what we're going through right now. And, you know, there's so many people suffering right now, and just how do we get resources to them, you know? So that's just my comment.
Thank you. We really appreciate that. And it's something that we take really seriously because we already see some of that coming into this work because everybody is bringing that perspective in. And, you know, all of us are living as people who weren't supposed to be here. And so I think those are all just very valid. And I think one of the things that we're hoping to at least help with is providing tools to work through some of these modern day issues that stem from a lot of what happened here that continues to happen and then also continues on a daily basis in the form of both active aggression, but then also microaggression, and then also just a lot of our community's inability, or not inability, but we've been deprived of a lot, and then also have been given things to make up for it that have created even more problems, for lack of a better way of saying it. And so I think you're completely right in that we're seeing things right now in society across California Native communities, whether it's urban populations, whether it's on-reservation populations, whether it's out-of-state populations that can't afford to live in their ancestral homelands anymore because it's just either there's fire everywhere or it's too expensive, or they've been gentrified out of their own homes. And so one of the things we're trying to provide, and what one of our partners is going to help us bring to the table is some supports to help us work through all of that and hopefully not re-traumatize each other in the process, which is a very tall order. So really appreciate your comments, and it's something that, again, I think this whole council is very mindful of, and we'll try to be as responsive as possible. And if you have ideas about how to navigate that, I think the council would love to work through that as well. The next, so with status and identity, that's kind of part of it. And we're thinking about too whether there might be appropriate moderators to work through some of these issues, given that all of us have something that we bring, and whether it's things that we bring because of what we're carrying personally from our ancestors, modern day, living in a place where we're not a lot of the population and we're invisible and we're constantly having to explain ourselves, whether it's the stuff that we actually bring to the table, or whether it's the things that people perceive us to bring, because we've also got all of these divisions that have been imposed on Native people that aren't Native divisions, and all sorts of different ways of making us make enemies of ourselves rather than thinking about the bigger problem. And so we're thinking about whether there might be appropriate partners to help moderate those discussions so that there is more of distance in those conversations rather than a focus on whoever's trying to work through the issues. So just putting that out there if anybody has any thoughts on that. We'll then staff the education subcommittee. So these three subcommittees have been created but have not yet been staffed by council members. And so in order for them to move forward, and a lot of the work that will be done over the next several months will be in the subcommittee structure, which does it, assuming that once they get organized on how they want to move forward, they'll have meetings like this that are open to the public and will work with the public depending on what the structure is. So for example, the status and identity subcommittee will hold meetings like this, moderated or not, and we'll have conversations about you know, how all of these big issues can be worked into the work of the council. The education subcommittee also has been created, and we anticipate that that will have a focus on curriculum development, but also education gaps for California Native kids, just based on, you know, districting and location and resources and broadband and all of that. And then, so that also will need subcommittee members. And then the elders committee also will need subcommittees members. And we anticipate that that will be more of an elders count. Well, I don't know if it's a council, but it'll figure out how it wants to organize itself. But it will be the way that we incorporate the wisdom of our elders and bring them into this work, and they can inform where they think we're messing up completely or where there are resources that they've already worked through that could be helpful in this space as well. The council also would like to create a that will, or sorry, subcommittee that will be focused on thinking about what are the actual things that the council wants to get out of this process and that the community wants to get out of this process, so that at the end of the day, when the work is done, what are the things that need to happen to make things right? Or not right, because that's not going to happen without a lot of time, effort, and commitment. But what are the efforts that can be made by the state toward correcting some of this awful history for modern people, modern Native people, to be able to feel like there has been at least some effort made toward restoration and reparation. So that group will be focused really on, you know, as we have these discussions, what are the things like land restoration? What are the things like, you know, tuition? What are the things like broadband infrastructure? All of the things that are lacking that can go toward building up Native people in California. And then any other subcommittees that the council would like to discuss. We'll then go into updates from the existing committees. So the Youth Council, again, will look, they'll frame how they actually want to engage, but this is meant to be a mirror council that is driven by the youth and their priorities and their perspectives, as long, as they're aligned with the work of this council. And then the Academic Partnerships Subcommittee and the Funding Partnerships Subcommittee, which are already active and staffed, and we'll be working over the next several months to, again, refine how they're going to move forward and engage academic partners and funding partners. We'll then go through the public engagements and public relations guidelines and process draft review and approval if it's ready, but also the council can have a bit more time to review and refine those processes and policies. And then the same with the council member code of ethics draft and the respectful engagement in meetings and listening sessions draft. And those are all some of the policies and processes that we hope to have in place for the council and for the community before we enter into the bigger work that's going to be a lot more intense, and make sure that we're not creating mechanisms where, again, we're engaging in potentially lateral violence or re-traumatization before we have some ground rules in place. And then, we'll have some updates on the public and community engagement and input that we had this week. So we appreciate all your input so far. And then we'll talk about the next meeting date and topics. We're going to propose that over the next few months that staff and the subcommittees work toward building up all of these policies and processes and contracts, which again will be open. We'll also continue to have listening sessions like this on a monthly basis, the evening session and the Monday session, with potentially a Friday session that's topical, or a Friday session that is a subcommittee meeting. So we'll be proposing that as well. And that the next meeting for business and action, we're hoping to do in early January with the next regular and 2-day meeting starting in March. And I apologize if I'm confusing everybody by what I just laid out there. But just so for people, if you could visualize, this is what we're going to be doing over the next several months is consultation. So we'll be working with the roughly 171 tribes to get further refinement, further feedback before we move forward. We'll be engaging in research coordination and report drafting, and then also our contracts that we're engaging in with our funding partner, who's also going to be providing documentary services, public relations services, and then also some of the emotional support services. And then also we'll be creating that community fund, which we'd like to get stood up by the end of the year so that community members can start applying and getting those funds in anticipation of the March meeting and be able to appropriately plan. And then we'll also be thinking about any training and tools that we'd like to have available on the website or for the community, like working through what are some of the things that you should be thinking about before engaging in this work? What are some of the resources that you might want to read before engaging in this work? And who are some of the people you might want to talk to before engaging in this work? And then we'll also be working through strategic planning with that deliverables subcommittee and any policies and procedures that need to get done prior to launching the quarterly meetings in 2022, which we are very hopeful we will be able to do in person on a regional basis. And if not, we will adjust and figure it out and go from there. Okay, so subcommittees, some of the updates. The Academic Partnerships Subcommittee is continuing to develop a mission and vision statement. And the subcommittee is meeting with the State Library and Archives to assist in scoping the work of the council, and will work with the federal government on resources within federal archives. For the benefit of this group, we have chatted with some folks from Interior about working with them as they move forward in their boarding school initiative, and where there are things that come up that come from California or implicate California Native peoples, that we'd like to work with them on that, so that, you know, we're not duplicating work, and that we're also, where they are standing up emotional and emotional supports, and also those types of contracts, that we're also having this group have access to those as well. So that's just for this group. We have gotten a lot of feedback that this council should be thinking about how the boarding schools impacted California Native peoples, and we take that serious. Are in chats with Interior about that, and they are eager to partner with us, and so they'll keep us posted on where they are. For this group, they're in the process of document pulling and researching what they have within their files, and that's supposed to be completed, I want to say, in late spring of next year. And at that point, that's when they'll start doing more community engagement and external facing engagement. So we anticipate that as they go through that process, we'll kind of be staying in touch and making sure that anything that is being done in California, and anything that comes up from California, that we'll look at that as well. But the Academic Partnership Subcommittee is also interested in thinking through what other resources the federal government has, whether it's, you know, archives of everything that went down with the 18 treaties, whether it's archives of child welfare work. There's the Indian Adoption Project. I don't know if that would be under the purview of the council, but it is something that really impacted Native families and communities, that the Bureau of Indian Affairs has a lot of archives on. And so that partnership committee is trying to think through all of the resources that are available in already existing archives, and think through how they'll partner with academic partners to access those as it feels appropriate from the community and from the council to incorporate. The Youth Council Subcommittee are also planning to host a youth convening kickoff, which is currently in development. And that kickoff will help inform how the council operates, what it wants to do, whether it looks like this council or whether it's something different, and how they want to work with the bigger council. And then the Funding Partnership Subcommittee has been staffed and will meet with the council's funding partner organization to develop a process for engagement and advise on the development of the community funding priorities and current council needs. For clarity for this group, the funding partner, as I mentioned, will be thinking through those bigger initiatives, and then we'll also be looking for someone from the California Native community to lead programming on their end, so that we'll have a liaison that is directly working on all of this, both the funding, but also the documentary work and all of the other needs. That group too, in addition to the things I've already identified, is also going to be thinking through, because they have a model of philanthropic reparations that they've put out there to incentivize private partners, other accountability partners to fund the work of reparations, meaning this is a piece of land, for example, that should go to this tribe, or this is a piece of land that should be held in trust for all tribes in perpetuity, and this is the price tag on that. And this company has benefited directly from the genocide of California Indian peoples. That's how they would match up those restorative and reparative acts. So that's just something that the Funding Partnerships Committee will also help inform, is what are the deliverables that we could actually assign to funding and accountability partners in this space. So I have talked enough. I'm going to stop sharing my slides and open it up if folks have thoughts, questions, concerns, comments, if any of the council members have questions for this group at this time. And we hope to engage in an interactive discussion to the extent that that's possible. if no one has anything they'd like to ask about, or no comments or questions, or just general feedback for the group or anything they brought with them to share with the group today, we can then go into some of the questions we're thinking about. And then also we could go into the respectful engagements document and why we're doing it, and also what's in it as well. So I'm going to go ahead and mute myself in case folks want to jump in. Loretta, would you like to?
Yeah, there's a question in the chat from Chuck about a potential land and resources committee and what the discussion has been around that.
Yeah, so right now the subcommittees that have been formed are really structural subcommittees. So it's areas where we've heard from the community that there needs to be a specific focus. And so, for example, with the status and identity subcommittee, we've heard that there needs to be a specific focus on the needs and priorities of several individuals of descent from this genocide that may not necessarily be members of federally recognized tribes. And so that there is more need and more of a lens that needs to be applied to those individuals and how to restore and repair that. And the other subcommittees are things where, you know, the council feels that it would benefit from the wisdom of elders, and so has created a subcommittee for that engagement. The council really wants there to be youth engagement and a youth lens, given that they're operating in an entirely different world and are thinking through things in a completely different way than any of us on this call, with the exception of any youth on this call, might be thinking about things, and may actually have ideas for this council that this council won't think of because of the way that all of us were raised and brought up in a different kind of timeline and a different kind of world. So that is a very long answer to say that it is very likely that something along the lines of a lands and resources subcommittee will happen and will come out of this work. I think there's a bit of a chicken and egg scenario with how this work gets done. And so I think as we move into the listening and the collecting of the documents and incorporating all of the body of resources into this work, that the council will be thinking a lot more critically about how to organize it. And so it is very likely that lands and resources are going to be a main topic, given how much the state of California has benefited from taking lands and resources, and how few lands and resources are still accessible at a base minimum accessible to California Native people. So I think it is envisioned by the council. It's a short answer with a lot of backstory, and is something that I think they will be very interested in having real solutions from the state offered up. And real solutions that, and my brain works in tangents, so I apologize. I go in a lot of different directions, but real solutions also from private people who have benefited from the divestment of lands and resources from tribes. So for example, we've heard from non-native folks that are interested in this work who may be 5th or 7th generation California people who haven't yet realized that means something to people who are have been here a lot longer. And so, you know, this council could look at ways for those folks to engage and to engage in this work meaningfully, in terms of if there is an estate that someone is interested in providing access, ownership transfer, or resource availability for tribes, those are things that individuals can do to be accountable in this space. And then I think, Chuck, too, just to riff off your question a little bit more, is I think, too, the state is trying to be a proactive partner in some of these spaces, but I think the real meaning will come when we have real actions that are generated by the community based on what the community sees as real needs. So I think this council will want the state to be directly responsive to what comes out of this work as well. Okay, Councilmember Bojorquez, go ahead.
I just had a question for Chuck, and if we need to have a conversation offline, please let me know. But I was just curious, when you were bringing that up, is that from your tribal council, from your tribal nation? Is that something that you're looking for support in the role in which you serve with Fish and Wildlife, you know, for Truth and Healing to support looking at that, right, and access to land resources? Obviously, I think, you know, each agency has its own, but if you're looking like support to, okay, well, let's bring state parks in, let's bring Fish and Wildlife, BLM, right, whoever we need to kind of try to all get stakeholders at the table to discuss how does that look. I was just trying to understand the lens in which you were looking at that through.
Well, I certainly don't speak for my tribe, more as an individual, also as a state employee. I just know that the issues surrounding lands and resources, access, co-management, you know, that's a huge array of issues. And I just think at this level, you know, at 30,000 feet, where this commission is, or this commission is operating, I think, you know, deserves a concerted effort to make some serious policy recommendations. And I think the way Christina answered the question is perfect. And I agree that it's probably a priority for a lot of folks. So it's just a matter of figuring out what that framework is going to look like to bring those discussions forward, I think.
Yeah, and I think from the state's perspective, as you know, we have the administration policy on ancestral lands, but I think from the state's perspective, the things that get those transfers and get that access and get the co-management agreements across the finish line is like a lot of focused, detailed requests and asks, and like having that level of specificity that is really not going to happen for a lot of people because of capacity and resources and just time constraints. And so where this council can help with funding initiatives that will help people do the work to get those things back, I think that's a really good role for this council to be able to facilitate. Additional comments, thoughts, questions, concerns? Council members are allowed to ask questions too if you have them. I'm going to put some questions in the chat for folks to think about. And one thing that we've been thinking about is how we, like I mentioned, accountability partners and folks that are of non-native descent, but who,